that are received across the city and educating or any organization with the capacity to do the work to apply. I think the first way we would know if in fact they were interested in coming back would be if they apply. What I have presumed is, based upon the communications I had in the limited time that I've been here, they want to see how stable we stay before they engage. And truth be told, we've had such a significant reduction in HOPWA funding that there may not be true interest on their part in coming back because there's just a $12 million, well, a almost $10 million reduction. But we're working to make this program, all of our entitlement programs, attractive across the board. The City of Atlanta receives the funds. For the most part, we don't provide the services. So it's a key priority for us to make sure service providers want to work with us. Otherwise, our residents lose out. So we haven't heard yet, but the lines of communication are open. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Councilman Amos. Councilman Westmoreland.
Yeah, I'm going to join on here as well. Councilman Hillis and I lived through the last 4 years and the incredible challenges that we faced as a city that actually led to this department being created in the first place. And I want to acknowledge John Keene, who has left for greener, happier pastures, and the role that he played in making that a reality. But your work, I know you got here 2 years ago on November 30th, and I just want to say a very public thank you for the work that the three of you and your team have done. We are a long way away from where we were 2 years ago, and we were well chronicled, justifiably so, for the 144 days and how unacceptably long that was. So I'm excited that there's a reporter in the room right now who can write just as many stories about how now we're down to 30 days. And that's a testament to you and your team, and I really appreciate all of your hard work.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Westmoreland. And it is, in fact, a terrific team. A lot of times people shout me out. Thank you, Commissioner. I could not have done this alone. I did not do this alone. There's a lot of work remaining to be done. But I stand before you today confident that we now have the right people who are committed to the work, and we will stay committed. Someone commented just last week that maybe people who do public work do it because they like the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 5. It is not. It is not. 8 to 5, 9 to 5, at least not for my team, but I'm grateful for the phenomenal people who are part of the Department of Grants and Community Development, and equally grateful for all of your support.
Thank you. I think that's the last question that we had. Thank you so much, and thank you for your service. All right. Up next, we have the Department of City Planning. And I know for today's agenda, I know we will have a communication shortly thereafter to discuss the future of the Department of City Planning, but we have our quarterly report. So Commissioner Prince, if you and the team wouldn't mind joining us to tell us a little bit how things are going, and then we'll go from there.
Good afternoon. Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I'm coming up on a month now. So today, for our presentation, I'm going to have one of our staff members, Ms. Kieta Holmes, give the presentation. But first, I'm going to give you a high-level overview. I wanted to let you know that our building permits, I'm jumping right in here, are back up to pre-pandemic levels. And our building valuations are at an all-time high. So things are really moving along fast. We're having more in-person inspections and fewer video, but that's still an option. We're implementing a number of changes to our permitting process, some short-term, mid-term, and long-term, really trying to increase efficiencies, look at our software, and make sure that everything is working together. What we want to do ultimately is decrease our overall timeline for permitting. And it may be things just as simple as calling the customer, particularly when you're working with someone who is not a professional developer who isn't doing this every day, reaching out to that customer and asking if they have any questions about feedback they've received from the city. Our zoning ordinance rewrite is getting ready to start again. Mark your calendars for Tuesday, November 29th. Okay, that's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. What we want to do here is simplify it, make it more user-friendly, update the language. It's, you know, it's got 1980s language in it. We want to incorporate our core values from city design into it. And we really also want to look at the building form, not just what's happening inside the building, but what does the building look like. This effort is going to dovetail with the update of our comprehensive development plan. Our city design office is moving to their new location on Mitchell Street. That's going to be the first week of December. I also wanted to tell you about short-term rentals. We've issued 226 short-term rental permits this fiscal year, so starting July 1, right? We're working with the law department to update our code addressing short-term rentals. We want it to be defensible and easy to understand and to work for our neighborhoods. The tree ordinance is also moving forward. Before the end of the year, council will have before them the first batch of changes to the zoning or to the tree ordinance. All of those things that the development community and our tree enthusiasts agreed upon. You probably remember some of that, kind of making things clearer, spelling out what trees are acceptable, and so forth. We have delivered 1,739 affordable housing units since the beginning of 2022. There's 3,940 under construction. I'm thinking the mayor will meet his goal, a number of affordable housing units. Tomorrow night, we have our NPU Chairs Appreciation Dinner. We've recently finalized the best practices for our NPUs, and we are working together with them on implementing those. And lastly, I want to tell you about the Freight ATL Northwest study, which I think is one of the coolest things we're doing. It's an 18-month-long study, and it's going to be finished next spring. We're really looking at the northwest area of our city where most of the freight operations are, and we're going to make transportation, land use, and economic development recommendations, and also recommendations for improved infrastructure. So that's all the high-level stuff. I've brought pretty much our whole team here to answer your questions. I think at 1 month's time, I've got most of it, but if you want to go too deep, I'm going to draw from the team.
Thank you, Ms.
Ms.
Prince.
Kieta Holmes will take over now.
Okay, and I was going to ask, 'cause I know we have, we're given a slide presentation. I didn't know that was going to be included as part of the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, no worries. We'll take questions once we're completely done, so, thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank Commissioner Prince for that high-level overview that she provided for us, and I'll just give you a little bit more in-depth information. First being, we have issued 2,316 building permits this fiscal year, the first quarter of this fiscal year. The Office of Buildings is on pace to issue over 9,000 permits, and this will be the most since we've issued since 2019. The construction valuation we're currently at is $1.65 billion, which will put us on pace to outperform all of the previous first quarters that we've had since we've been tracking this information. Over 26,000 inspections have been performed this fiscal year, and that means 60% of those inspections have been done in person, on site, by DCP staff. We are still offering virtual third-party inspection, virtual and third-party inspections, but most of the inspections that are taking place right now are on site. You did hear Commissioner Prince talk about the permitting improvements that we are doing in the Department of City Planning. The areas of focus are on innovation, execution, technology, implementation, and impact services. DCP is in collaboration with other development departments, including watershed management and ATO DOT, to finalize and improve the permitting process. The idea is that when someone submits a building permit, that someone is assigned to them from our development services team, and they usher that permit through the entire development process from permit submittal to permit issuance. The idea is that it will reduce the timeline that from the time someone submits to the time that the permit is issued. And in addition to that, OOB has established the Development Services Team. The Development Services Team is one person that is assigned to that application once it is submitted, or that permit once it's submitted, and they usher that entire permit through the entire process and find any pain points, such that if the permit gets stuck at any review level, they contact either the reviewer or the applicant to find out what the issue is, and then move the application along. When the permitting improvements process began, there were about 4,300 applications in the pipeline. As of September 30th, the number of permits have been reduced in that pipeline to 273. The Office of Buildings has received about 649 complaints with regard to code enforcement. Of those complaints, 339 of those have been found to be compliant, or 52% of them. Of those 649, 206 notices have been given and are still pending compliance. 39 are pending further investigation and research. 65 citations have been issued, and 67 of those complaints are still at SWO. Short-term rental. There have been 1,438 total applications received for short-term rental since the inception. That's 1,219 in FY22 and 219 in FY23. There have required 837 revisions, and 925 short-term rental licenses have been issued since inception of the permitting process. There's ongoing marketing and communication. There have been updates to the short-term rental website from the DCP website, trying to provide more information to residents who are trying to apply and go through that program, so it's easier for them to understand and to review. I'm happy, very, very happy to announce that our zoning ordinance rewrite is about to kick off again. As you know, it was on a temporary pause until a commissioner was hired for the department. Our commissioner is now on, and we will start those 4 workshops that were intended to start in late summer of this year. We'll start those on the 29th. Those four workshops will have a specific focus, being being conservation, being growth, being affordability, being design, all those types of issues that we've discussed previously in our IDEA labs. Our IDEA Lab information is posted on our ATL zoning website for residents and anyone else to review. And once the workshops kick off, we'll have more in-depth discussions about those types of issues. The workshops will also will likely lead to other workshops that we'll have that will be workshopping on a particular idea or topic, so that everyone that is associated with living in Atlanta, working in Atlanta, being a stakeholder in any of the processes that we do here in development have the opportunity to have their voices heard, and all that information will be synthesized and will eventually wind up being in what our zoning rewrite text will be, so that we are responsive to everyone that is a part of the city of Atlanta. As the commissioner has said, the Atlanta City Design Studio is relocating. It is moving actually around the corner from Broad Street to Mitchell Street. With that move, they will be able to restart their public engagement processes and meetings that they had at the city studio, and those were found to be very engaging, and the community really liked them, especially when it was down on Cascade. A lot of work came out of that, and we hope to mimic that work here in the new location on Mitchell Street. With regard to housing and economic development, you did hear just recently that 2 Peachtree Street was recently purchased by Invest Atlanta on behalf of the city to do affordable housing. In addition to that, the 184 Forsyth legislation will be advancing today at today's Community Development and Human Services Committee meeting with regard to creating other affordable housing opportunities near Garnett Marta Station. They also, the Office of Housing and Community Development also has supported the launch of the Mayor's Affordable Housing Strike Force, which is working to coordinate redevelopment of other publicly owned lands in and around the city. To date, there has been 1,739 of affordable housing units delivered and another 3,940 units in the pipeline. That amounts to 5,679 units, or approximately 28% of the mayor's goal to provide 20,000 units of affordable housing in the city. The office has also done work in the Thomasville Heights community, relocating residents who lived in the Forest Cove multifamily development. All those residents have been relocated as of September 30th, and there is planning ongoing to redevelop Thomasville Heights area to include the Forest Cove area and any of the other public lands that are owned there in that area. There's also continuing efforts with regard to Street Eats, which is the food truck program that you see out on our Trinity Avenue side of the building. There's also work with the Atlanta Main Street and small business services, and then the office also works with the nightlife service to help small businesses and other business owners to navigate nightlife affairs here in the city. Our neighborhood planning units are extremely active. There are currently 4 MPUs that are meeting hybrid, and those are MPUs K, Y, S, and D. The MPU team has also created what is called Corner Conversations. Corner Conversations takes the MPU team out into the community to answer questions related to any and all things DCP, as well as other questions that are asked in those corner conversations, and bring that information back to other departments to take DCP out to the community. There is a summit with neighborhood association presidents where there were over 60 persons represented that participated in that neighborhood association presidents conversation. The chair's appreciation dinner at the Peachtree Club will be tomorrow night, and anyone who would like to come, we encourage any of the council members who have not signed up to come. The MP University is still moving forward. We are still providing lots of services and classes to any resident that would like to participate in those classes. Parliamentary procedures, zoning 101, 102, 103, permitting, all kinds of things are provided in MP University, and it actually has been very well received. In last month, the MPU team delivered the best practices for MPUs to deliver it as promised to City Council, and MPUs are able to use that information to move their MPUs forward with great efficiency. Our tree protection ordinance. Phase 1 of the revisions focus on addressing controversial changes. Those began in spring of 2022, and there was engagement with a broad group of stakeholders to aid in the development of that language. Those included tree advocacy groups, trade development groups, Atlanta Tree Conservation Commission, City Council, and the Mayor's Office. There are other proposed updates to plan review standards, planting requirements, enforcement, and the use of tree trust funds to assist low-income homeowners with hazardous trees. And that legislation will be submitted this week to advance that forward before the end of the year. As the commissioner spoke about Freight Atlanta, the Freight Atlanta Northwest study is an 18-month study that is supposed to conclude in spring of 2023. The outcome of that project is to help the city determine the best ways to move freight here in the city in this urbanized area to and from some of the industrial properties that we still have in the city, so that freight is still an option in those jobs as well as those services that are provided via freight can continue to be a viable part of the economic base here in the city of Atlanta. And with that, I will conclude and open the floor for questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Holmes. Before I turn the floor over to colleagues, I did have a couple questions for you. The first one I have, I really appreciate the slides that you share at every presentation around all the different development work streams that are happening across the city over year. I'm curious, 'cause I know there's some groups that are doing advocacy work around watching developments that are happening in communities. Does DCP have anything that's public facing as far as something to this effect that public can access, maybe even broken down by MPU or zip code or things like that show permits that are being applied for? I know there's CELA, and I have another question about that specifically. But I'm just curious if kind of the bar charts that were shared as far as what's been going on, if there's anything that's public facing that could serve. I remember seeing a portal that was created a few years ago around what applications are going before MPUs, but something that would allow for community groups to better understand what is happening in their backyard, I think would be great. And it sounds like the data is already there because y'all are clearly using that for your presentation before council. And I know we're using Power BI and Tableau and other tools like that have public-facing kind of interactive widgets, if you will. But just wanted to throw that out there as a comment if y'all aren't doing it, and as a question if you are.
Certainly, Councilmember Dozier, we actually have a couple different places where you can find that kind of information. There's an MPU dashboard that was just recently created, and that is on the MPU website or website from our DCP website. There's also information on entitlement work that's been done and approved on our GIS application platform. And I'll let Mr. Pace talk about building permit information.
Yes. Good afternoon, council members. To answer your question regarding the charts and the metrics, those are usually published on on DCP's website. Exactly, I couldn't tell you exactly where it is, but it is usually published on our website as far as the metrics are concerned quarterly.
Okay. And just thinking through, I'm going to make up a use case off the bat, so bear with me a little bit. But I know we have like Neighborhood Nexus that ARC publishes, and you can look at different demographic indicators for MPUs or neighborhood groups or census blocks and tracts. And to have something similar from a city's perspective that allows you to see construction valuation, what types of, I know I get a monthly roll-up of all the different permits that are submitted to our office. I imagine someone could find that information easily through an open records request, but to be, I guess, to push that information out, I think would be just a huge benefit for communities that right now feel like development is happening at them and not with them, and just giving them an additional tool through the existing software that we already have, I think would be helpful. And so like I said, it's more of a comment than a question, but if the question side of that is if that's something we can pursue, more than the quarterly reporting that we're doing, but something that's real-time, that's interactive, that includes a lot of information that you're sharing here. And I guess the part two of that, with Acela, if I remember correctly, we're looking at other options. I know we've had Acela for a while. I remember there was some sort of, we were evaluating some aspect of Acela that could potentially lead to changes. Could you remind me of what was going on with that?
Well, currently, with our overall permitting improvement, we are going to be looking at technology, and that will include looking at all of our technology and trying to develop or looking at different software companies that could possibly give us more of an enterprise solution that can be across all departments as opposed to just one area. So we're looking at that in holistically to try to provide some information on that. And just to go back to your metrics and reporting that out as well, we are working with our GIS manager and Acela. Acela has something called Acela Insight, which uses Power BI to kind of display the same information that you're speaking of. And so we're working with that to try to be more proactive in getting this information out to the public, as you stated.
Thank you. I'll be on the lookout for that. And before I move on to my next question, I do want to acknowledge we've been joined by Councilman Michael Julian Bond, and I realized I didn't acknowledge that we were joined by Councilmember Liliana Bakhtiari during the presentation, so I just wanted the public to be aware of that. Just going back to the presentation about construction valuation, I've asked this before and I can never remember the answer. Is that in nominal dollars or is that controlled for inflation, the valuations that are presented on the...
I'm sorry, you faded on me.
Sorry. So on the slide, on slide 4, there's a slide that shows construction valuation. There's another slide that shows it year over year. I was asking if it was in nominal dollars. So is it, based on what was reported in that year, and we continue to show that year over year, or is that controlled for inflation, recognizing that we're in a hyperinflationary environment, construction costs have gone up, just trying to see so we can get an apples to apples comparison of how valuable these investments in our communities are. Just curious.
Well, it's based on the cost of construction, based on a valuation table in ICC, International Code Council, which is what we adopted back in 2009. Mm-hmm. Our rates or that construction valuation has not changed since then, and therefore this is year over year, day after day, the actual valuation based upon 2009's ICC table 1.
So when you share, the valuation for 2019, I guess the question is that based on 2019 dollars or is that based on today dollars?
That was based on 2019 dollars that was used for the 2009 code. Okay,
thank you. Mm-hmm. Sorry for the not direct question there, but I appreciate the answer. STRs, December 5th, is that still the date that we're working against?
Yes, sir. At this time, yes.
Okay. All right. And then for the affordable housing metrics and KPIs that we're planning against, does that total number account for the loss of affordable units, whether it's naturally affordable units that a homeowner or apartment owner might decide no longer to take housing choice vouchers or to no longer participate in a program, they go market rate, or situations where I know, for instance, with a lot of our Invest Atlanta programs, we have 15-year affordability periods, maybe extended to 30 years. And I'm just curious how that model is, if that's included in the model to determine our net affordable housing gains. John Humphreys.
Hey everyone, Josh Humphreys here with Department of City Planning. So the metrics include projects that have come online, either through creation of new units or preservation. Villages at East Lake's probably a good example of that, where it is an active preservation of affordable housing units, where those are renovation, and then a long-term affordability period tacked on top of a project that had long been affordable. So those numbers are counted in there, and then also in the pipeline those are. it's a little bit more difficult as far as like kind of attrition of naturally occurring units, or even ones that phase out to track that. It's something that we're actively working toward, and I think it's a really important number for as far as the global health of our housing ecosystem. But the numbers there are really tracking ones that we have a direct impact on, to either create or preserve for affordable units.
Thank you. That was my last question. Councilmember Hillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Prince and Ms. Holmes. A few questions. One, so what is DCP's current vacancy rate? And I guess somewhat related to that, what percentage of DCP staff are back to work either 4 to 5 days a week, and what is the plan going forward with that?
I'm not sure about our vacancy rate, but I can check on that for you and get back with you on that. We are following the mayor's directive for 75% of the staff to be in the office at any time. So what that averages out to is people are in the office 4 days a week and working remotely 1 day. Some people like to be here every day. I am one of them.
Thank you for that. Another issue that I've had with multiple departments, I'm not picking on you all. There's one city department that does this well, and that is presentation of your SLAs and where each of those are. You know, we went into COVID and everyone went remote, and some departments basically shut down, and you know, it's like, oh, what's an SLA? But you know, as I mentioned, we're back to work now, at least 75% of the time. Like, we need to see SLAs to see, you know, how your department's doing. I mean, if you have a problem, don't hide that. You know, as I said, first step in solving a problem is admitting you have one. So we need to see those SLAs, whether they're, you know, green, yellow, orange, or red. So I would just ask that you include that in your next quarterly presentation when it comes to
Sir,
letting us
we will do that.
see those. Some questions about, and I can't believe I'm asking this and going into these weeds or trees, but the tree protection ordinance updates. I saw something in here about invasive, requiring invasive species like vines around trees, but as you know, one of the requests I had previously is that there's more invasive species type enforcement. So I'm wondering, in addition to that part in here about requiring vine removal when a property is developed, I forgot how it was worded, but any kind of invasive species enforcement contemplated in the new tree protection ordinance?
I'm going to have to grab my summary to be able to answer that for you.
I think it looks like you have an eager.
I did not realize it.
Andrew Walter, Department of City Planning. The provision in the upcoming changes to the TPO, proposed changes, is it's a simple one. It's just that trees that are being preserved on site that are then to be counted towards basically the minimum tree cover on that lot won't be counted unless if there's invasive vines that could threaten the health of the tree. Ivy is the one you see the most, wisteria, kudzu, some, but just that's the only requirement related to invasive species. Anything else would be, I think, a code enforcement issue related to either poison ivy or kudzu.
Andrew, you're including privet in that, correct?
No, just vines. And the reason for that is that the vines actually climb the tree and can kill the individual species, whereas privet is more, it prevents regeneration of the forest as a whole, rather than threatening the individual trees.
Thanks for that. And also on the TPO, one update I did see, I think, a few fees thrown in here, but no contemplated update to recompense fees.
That came up and was debated, and we couldn't come to an agreement. So that is going to wait for another round of changes, which we anticipate happening.
I think that's all I have for now. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Wait, Andrew, come on back. So obviously, one, you and Janity did an incredible job leading those conversations, so thank you. Also, welcome back, Janity. And one of my questions was, I know that we said we were going to wait on the recompense. Now I know that we are waiting for a commissioner. Are we going to I know the next meetings were scheduled for when?
They haven't been scheduled
They
yet.
have not been scheduled yet.
No.
Okay. Is there a way for us to go ahead and push forward? Because as Councilmember Hillis brought up, I think recompense fees is probably, I remember I was in the room. Yes, that was a very heated debate. But it's arguably the most important thing I think we can tackle in the new tree ordinance. How can council push for the next meeting? What would be most helpful?
I think the most helpful thing would be to adopt the changes we're going to put forward before the end of this year so that those can be settled and not reopened to discussion. And then that way we can focus on the recompense fees.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of our invasives, will this also apply to major carriers in the city, such as Home Depot and Lowe's? Or is that a conversation we're going to have to assist with?
We'll apply all of our ordinances to everyone.
Okay.
Follow up on that. It sounds like there is nothing in this ordinance that prohibits the sale of these plants. It's simply that they have to be removed from existing trees.
Okay. So I'll make it my mission to get Home Depot and Lowe's to stop carrying privet and wisteria and everything else. In terms of, and thank you, Andrew. Those are my questions for tree ordinance. You are free now. So for the mapping of the zoning rewrite, Kieta, this might be a you question. Hi, Kieta.
Hi, Councilmember.
For the zoning rewrite and how we're going to be doing, how we're moving forward with that, I know that we were discussing a housing deficit map. That was one of the things we talked about that you all said that you were beginning to work on. I'm not sure if that's been a continued conversation. My concern is with the zoning rewrite and how housing is distributed across the city. We obviously have the projected growth over the next 20 years. Is that going to be and we know what that's going to be. Based on that, we have the opportunity to talk about how much housing should be added to each neighborhood across the city so that we can aim to distribute that evenly so that we don't just have density going up in one area while one neighborhood or one district is completely neglected. Is that going to be factored in at all into zoning rewrite, or is that a longer conversation?
It actually will be a workshop conversation, and it will be a longer conversation because we need to determine which neighborhoods want growth and where they want that growth. Because what looks like growth in Council District 5 doesn't look like growth in Council District 11. And we wanted to give residents the opportunity to opine on that. There will be regulations that allow that growth. It will allow the different types of housing types, the different types of zoning, all those kinds of things those are kind of basic. But where that goes and how it goes and its rate of development will actually need to be a conversation that's had.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And just an FYI, we're going to be piloting our own housing town halls in District 5, 4 of them throughout the different neighborhoods to try to find out what people are excited about when it comes to housing, what they're afraid of, et cetera, to kind of soften that conversation, because I think that was one of the things that was missing when there was a major zoning overhaul proposed last cycle or last year. So I would love for the planning department to be a part of that. So I'll
Absolutely.
follow up on that.
Absolutely.
And those are my questions on zoning for now. My other question is, when do we think STRs, we're slated for that for December, correct? Oh, here comes Greg. I know this is your favorite conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Yes, it's slated for December 5th is the enforcement date.
Okay. Do we predict any more delays than that, or do we think that we'll be able to actually move forward with that in December?
I have
No
I
idea.
cannot comment on that right
Okay.
now, Councilmember. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, if there's anything we can do to assist with that, please let me know. I have a lot of questions about it in my district, obviously. I think on heat map, we rank 3rd highest in the city. 3rd or 4th, I think we're up there.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
and thank you all for sending out those. And my last question, you're free, Greg, is around pay compression issues. I mean, one of the complaints I've heard from the Home Building Association and from some of the others is that we've had issues with getting those approvals out, and like, obviously licensing issues, as you might have heard Councilmember Hillis and others bring up. I'm concerned about, I know that we're doing the pay study, but are we having issues with any retention with our planning department? Because I know we're having issues with getting approvals out, and I want to make sure that we're offering any assistance to you as you come into this role and to the department, because as I heard Kieta doing her presentation, we're putting out a lot of approvals, and there's a lot of applications coming in.
We do have some issues with retention and turnover. And the pay study is going to be happening very soon, I'm understanding. And so hopefully that will address some of it. We have to look at it farther, further out, and look at more of it. We want to make sure that we're able to attract and keep the best talent.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all of my questions for now.
Hey, Councilmember Bakhtiari, any other questions or comments from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you all so much. All right. And ironically, I believe the next item on our agenda is communications.
Item number 1 is 22C 5165, a communication from Mayor Andre Dickens appointing Ms. Janae Prince to serve as Commissioner of the Department of City Planning for the City of Atlanta.
Thank you. And Ms. Prince, I know we had a few questions for you before, but I see we have Deputy CO Atta with us as well. DCO, I'll give you a chance to say a few words, and I imagine we'll hear from the Commissioner, and then we'll have some questions.
Hello, council members. As you know, this is DCO Atta from Mayor's office. As you know, when Mayor Dickens took office, there were some vacancies at the commissioner level, and we did commit to do national searches and find competent people to occupy these positions. We've been before this committee and other committees to introduce different commissioners that have been appointed, and this is one of the final ones, the DCP role. And after a national search, we found someone that we believe we need to present to you. And we've gone through individual meetings with most of you, I believe. And so Ms. Janae Prince here is our candidate for the DCP commissioner role, and today we present her to you for confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Prince.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, questions from colleagues, comments from colleagues, thoughts from colleagues. Councilmember West Moreland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. I appreciate the chance that we had to talk at the end of September one-on-one, and for the benefit of the public, wanted to ask some of the same questions that I did during that conversation that are kind of broader in nature than the ones that we just did during the quarterly report, but kind of speak to the philosophy and values that you will bring to this role, which I think is an incredibly important one over the next 15 to 25 years of Atlanta's future as we continue to grow. And so we've touched on some of these topics already today, but so they will all be familiar to us. But if we could start, trees, MPUs, zoning, housing affordability, and then downtown stability and growth are the areas that I'd like to touch on, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But if you could just share some thoughts. I know we've got the quick fixes on the tree question that'll be coming before us in the next couple of weeks, but as you look towards the second phase of that conversation, what is guiding you as we look to both preserve our canopy and plant new canopy, but also balance that with the growth and development that needs to take place in the city?
Thank you for asking that. One of the most important things, possibly the most important thing I want to do while I'm here, is implement our plans. You know, our planning documents, they express the vision of the citizens of Atlanta. through the planning process. So everything is written into a plan, so we know what to do. I didn't want to come here and reinvent the wheel. I wanted to see these visions come to life. Now, from the Atlanta City Design, one of the goals is nature. And I think we need to be cognizant of that in all of our planning documents, in our zoning ordinance update, in our tree protection update. The devil's in the details though, right? So this is why we continue to engage with the public and engage with y'all for direction. I plan to continue to update you on everything that we're doing. I'd like for all of you to feel comfortable coming to me with ideas, questions, concerns, whatever you've got. And I will be transparent in the challenges that we're facing and keep you all in the loop and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
On MPUs, next year, we're going to come up on the 50th anniversary of their creation. And everyone in the room has some experience in the last several weeks of the type of passion that can be evoked when potential changes to the MPU system are offered. I'm curious, kind of as you look over the last 5 decades and towards the future, we've got 25 of them. One MPU has 1,800 residents living in it. There's another that's got 66,000. Kind of, how do you see their role in the development of policy and what we pass? Do you foresee any changes that need to be made to how they operate, to the lines that currently exist? Kind of what is your philosophy around neighborhood planning units and the role that they should play in the future?
So I don't know if I told all of you when we had our individual meetings, but I am an NPU person. When I went to college at Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio, they have a similar system to ours. They call them the area commissions. I was on the University Area Commission for 3 years, and I won't say how many decades back that was. But I'm a true believer in this system. Planning is supposed to be a grassroots process, and our NPUs tell us what's going on in the neighborhood, what works, what doesn't, and why. We do have some foundational documents from when the NPU system was created in 1975, and I've looked. The NPUs are supposed to be similar in size, and they're supposed to be similar types of neighborhoods. So they're, you know, the ones that are facing the same issues. That said,